Greetings, my brothers and sisters. Sending gratitude to all of you who are joining in today to accompany us down the rabbit hole of self-exploration through plant medicines. My name is Ryan Sprague, and I'm here to tell you that your frequency is now set and tuned to explore psychedelic medicines and the impact they've made among the countless psychonauts exploring the last true frontier. Buy a ticket and take the ride with me as we get true first-hand accounts of the experiences, benefits, risks, and transformations taking place within the ever-expanding world of psychedelic medicines on This One Time on Psychedelics. Stopping by on his epic journey of life to share space with us today is a soul brother of mine who is an absolute force to be reckoned with in the movement space, and his thought process behind the idea of combining psychedelics and movement to restore optimal human function, mechanics, and life force is a breath of fresh air, as new research is showing time and time again just how beautifully they complement one another in the healing process. He is a true pioneer, and I am beyond excited for all the rabbit holes we are going to jump down today. So please help me in welcoming my man K Jungle to the show. Jungle, what's up, my man? We're crushing this, bro. We're doing it.
I received that. Let me first say gratitude.
Yeah, bro.
Gratitude, and I appreciate the opportunity to vibe out on something that I feel is very much needed. And just as the universe knows, it's time to make magic.
Hell yeah, bro.
How are you?
Dude, I'm doing great, man. You know, for everyone listening, we just wrapped up an epic episode of Highly Optimized. And now we're crushing it on here, man. You know, it's so fun doing two different podcasts. Yeah, because, like, you know, one of the things...
Yeah, my mind is like...
Oh, dude.
Let's go. What now?
And, you know, like, we flirted with the idea of plant medicines and Highly Optimized, right? We brought up a little bit about meditation, a little bit of, like, esoteric stuff. And now we're about to dive in.
Bring them here, too. So
yeah. We're about to dive into the main course here, you know? And, dude... I'm so excited for this conversation, as I know you share my love and affinity for plant medicines, and you have a lot to say with regards to how they've helped you personally, as well as people you are close to. I'd love it if we could begin by hearing a little bit of your background and how you first got introduced to plant medicines as a whole, because I feel like that journey is epic, bro.
So I'm all about thinking, right? I'm all about the brain. Plant medicine. That's a powerful, way to express what comes from it. So before I even knew and decided to call it something so sacred like plant medicine, it was just something that I just had access to that I never really dabbled into it until I got a little older, like around high school-ish. And that it was just a recreational thing. And it really wasn't plant medicine. I didn't have none of those ideas of cultivating myself with it as a healing mechanism. And I had no idea that it could actually heal other people and healing myself. Yeah. So it didn't dawn on me until intentions became a part of why I do things, and meditation becoming a part of why I do things. And I realized that when I set intentions and then I go into this plant medicine, I'm able to extract more benefits, or we'll call them downloads. So it became plant medicines for me, literally, probably a few years ago. And it all commingled with injury. That's my whole awakening process. Plant medicines, it was the last piece, but it was the most powerful piece because I realized I've always been connected to it. Just I didn't understand the intent behind it, in which I wasn't aware of. And now that I am aware, it's definitely a great, it's an honor actually to have access to that, and for Mother Earth to even to be fruitful and to give us something so powerful. And it's definitely powerful. It's definitely powerful.
I love that, man. And, I feel so many can resonate with that, right? Because a lot of the fact that we, I have a great question later on about the fact that we have a lot of elders, but not wise elders, and so in that pattern, what's really happened is that so many of us have grown up using these. If we've used them as recreational things, which is not inherently bad. I don't hold a lot of the dogma that a lot of people do on it. I think you can have a lot of fun with psychedelics, right? But they're just like, it's like
have your fun.
Yeah, dude. And it's like,
do your thing.
It's like how you can use a hammer to, like hammer in a screw, but it's going to work better if you just get a screw gun, So it's like, for me, it's like, yeah, it doesn't mean you can't just use them recreationally, but it does mean that if you want to get the best amount of downloads, the best amount of just like information from them and help from them, using them in the way that, they've been used for thousands of years, really aids in that. And I'm curious for you because, speaking for myself, when I was first introduced to the world of plant medicines, I had some serious challenges to them stemming from the programming I had gone through in the education system with programs.
That's crazy. You threw that because I was about to add to it.
Think about like DARE, right? Like DARE and the Just Say No movement. And I'm curious, did you experience a similar feeling when first being introduced to them? And if so, at what point did that programming begin to leave you?
Well, I think subconsciously I already had a connotation on it from an experience of other people, and it wasn't a lot of people. It was just like people that I knew to be considered wild growing up, or just like having a lot of fun growing up, and like, yo, he was off acid, and then you hear a myth, which could potentially be a true story. It's like, you really don't know, like, yo, he was wild off acid. And then you think of like acid, and it's like acid, it doesn't sound like it's a good, so it's like from experience, it was like, that's what I got. I never really allowed the external, like those things to actually hinder me. It would more so be like just the way that the outside people put the words into Google and how they made it a bad indentation, and then certain things that happen in the world that they might have necessarily blamed these healing medicines on to fuel different propagandas and stuff like that. So it's like, but I do know, like, there's always a more natural way to that. So it's like cocaine. There's a natural substance that's in plants. So it's like, okay, so now I know. I was like, okay, so what's really going on? And then I just never had the opportunity to be faced with it. And having resources and being able to connect to spiritual beings. And I was able to meet you, and I was able to meet you in a lake house, and have access to certain healing medicines that I never would have thought I would have been in that space to now make that decision. Like, okay, but it was just so much love. It was just so much love that it didn't even matter. And I'm so positive. So it just really didn't, it just seemed like the perfect time.
Yeah.
And I always knew that, just like my cookie jar, I always knew if anything was to happen, I could get myself out of it. Like, I truly believe it. I truly believe I'm that aware and strong enough where I could calm myself down if I need. I know who to call. I'll be able to be able enough. So I always go in like that. And everything. And I've had challenging trips. And when plant medicines wasn't my title at the time, when I didn't honor it, and I just was out smoking, and I've had mine laced before, and I've had a crazy experience, which is actually really was a great experience if I knew and understood
how to work there.
Right. Yeah. Oh my God. It was like amazing actually. But it was laced with things that wasn't natural though.
Yeah.
But it definitely got me in a space where I was like, yo, this shit is fucking. And I was playing football at the time, and it just hit me. It was like, I had to like lay on the floor like, holy God. This shit was crazy. But and then like moving plants, so now you have different modalities of plant medicine. You got ayahuasca, you got LSD, you got all of these things, and it's like, okay, I was only initially where like understanding a minority standpoint of weed being a price,
Mm-hmm.
and the price on mushrooms is pretty high.
Mm-hmm.
And then like when you get, typically you wouldn't buy that.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't really have access to that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely it, now that I do have that resource, and now that I can understand it and actually look at it as a healing mechanism and honor it as what it should be. It's a ride. It's definitely a ride that you go on, and it's great. It's a great ride. It's a great ride.
Yeah, man. You know, I'm glad you
It's a
brought
great
up,
ride.
like, the first thing that I loved that you brought up was how, like, people want to blame psychedelics for things, right? Like, oh, that guy took acid and then he went crazy. It's like, no, that guy was crazy and acid brought it out in him, but he chose to do acid, right? So, like, you know, the funny thing is, like, the projections, right? We learned this in the language world. Like, oh, acid made me do that. It's like, no, you did it. It was in there the whole time, right? And I think like that brings up like a very like interesting concept, which is like until people realize that within each person is the full range of evil to positive, right? Like, you know, if anyone listening is wondering what I'm saying, like you can be like a very calm person. Like I'll use myself as an example. Like I am a lover, not a fighter, right? But if someone flips me off in traffic and like almost runs me off the road, you better believe there's going to be some anger that comes up. And in that moment,
Yeah.
if I didn't know how to control that, right? Like I mean, animalistic things could come out, right? And so,
Right.
I think a lot of people get into plant medicines and psychedelics before they understand the real nature of the human being. And that can present some challenges. And I think that's why, once again, you know, we have many elders, but not wise elders. And I think if we did, we'd have much better information out. And that's really the reason why I created this podcast, is because I feel as though there is so many people getting into it right now, especially people that don't have experience with even cannabis. And now they're hearing about psilocybin and all these things, and they're getting with their friends who also have no experience, and they're deciding to try things. And then one person has a bad trip, you know, and all these things. And so the whole point of me starting this was really so people could come and they could hear like the full range of things that could happen. Yeah, there's great positive things, and there can be like really scary things that happen too. And you should be aware that those things can happen. And the mantra that I use whenever I have a challenging experience is you took a medicine and it's working the exact way you intended before you took the medicine, right? So just relax. Like it's working the exact way you thought it would, you know? And I began using cannabis when I was 16. And it wasn't until I began researching cannabis when I was 18 that I discovered how natural and healing this medicine, along with other plant medicines, truly were. Do you remember when you first found out the potential healing component to these medicines? And what did that discovery do to your development into becoming who you are today and recognizing that the powers that be might be covering up other things in life that could greatly help in easing suffering and creating connection in the world?
Probably a couple years ago.
Mm.
Yeah, a couple years ago. It's a great question. Man, that's a great question. You hit this one on the
Guilty as
head.
charged, bro. Guilty as charged.
Just rewind the last part.
Yeah, I got you, bro. So like, basically like, you know, one of the things I've noticed throughout my development and throughout learning about plant medicines is that, for instance, like we talked about in Highly Optimized real quick, that things like cannabis, things like psilocybin are not that great for working in a cubicle, right? Like it won't exactly help the powers that be convince you that you should be in a cubicle and that you should be not self-sufficient and that you shouldn't learn how to grow your own agriculture. Like when I started doing psilocybin and using cannabis, I started really thinking about like, oh, maybe I want to grow my own food, you know? And so I'm curious, you know, if when you started learning about the true nature of the healing power of these medicines, if it started shifting your perspective and allowing you to look at other areas of life and go, I wonder if there's misinformation being spread in this area too, like being a sovereign being, like being an entrepreneur versus working for someone else, you know, like all those things.
Gotcha.
Did psychedelics help that? Hey, everybody. I hope you're enjoying the show. I wanted to take a quick moment to let you all know that the doors are officially open for the Conscious Cannabis Collective. And as such, this is the last week you can sign up and receive all of the bonuses we're currently including. This is the last time I will be personally onboarding those of you who sign up with a complimentary one-on-one session, and you'll have the ability to get the Grow with Cannabis course for free during this limited time. For more info on how you can take advantage of this offer, Head down to the show notes for this episode and secure your spot today, as we only have so many spots left and they are filling up quickly. Now back to the show.
Yeah. So I would say in being more honest with myself as far as meditating, as far as like stillness and seeing the true nature that has on me as a human, as a being, and how that energy projects to other people.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's, okay, what happens when I use this medicine? And then as I use this medicine, I get to understand the properties that it has. So I might start journaling. I might just write certain things down. Like for my meditation, I might go in with a meditation, and the intent going in was some information or a conversation that I might have. So I'm gonna meditate on this whole moment here.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm gonna come out with a download, more downloads.
Mm-hmm.
So in doing that, it's like, okay, this medicine has the power to keep you connected.
Mm-hmm.
And once I realized I could be connected without it,
mm-hmm.
but actually having this medicine allows for that connection to be more vibratory.
Mm-hmm. So
everything is enhanced and everything is more freer, and you're able to express yourself more. Mm-hmm. So then that fueled natural movement, and I was able to see how you do one thing is how you do all things. So the carryover from just the stillness and feeling that energy and being able to mentally tap into certain things. Imagine taking that or having that same stillness, but incorporating it when you move, when you dance. And I started, like with LSD, I feel like a kid again. And one of my biggest things was when I dance, I want to always feel like a kid, because that's what truly makes me happy. One of the things that truly makes me happy is just dancing, just having fun, expressing yourself. And I never want to lose sight of what it feels like to be a kid again on that stage and just dancing my little heart out. Right. So it allows for me to just stay connected in that space. And even when you do it, you don't have to do it you don't have to do it all the time. Mm-hmm. It only takes, I mean, for me, from my experience, I do it all the time because I love it. And at certain times when I realize that certain times you have to detach for a little bit just to make sure the balance is there. Yeah. But I love all of it. All of it.
I'm with you, man. And I'm really glad you put in that last part, right? Because for those listening, like I spent the last 5 years in the cannabis industry, right? Where daily use is rampant, right? And everyone's like, dude, it doesn't give you cancer. It's fine. Just do it every day, right? Like, and that's like literally like where the conversation ends, right? And so, I won't go through the whole story because I've gone through it on Highly Optimized quite a few times. But basically through a series of events, I was never like an all-day user, right? I would use like a couple bowls at night when I got home from work just to like relax. And what I realized in that was actually that I needed to feel the undesirable emotion that was stemming from like working at a place that didn't feel in alignment with me, right? And I wasn't allowing myself to feel that by using cannabis every night. And so now what I do is I take Monday through Friday off, right? The work week is usually the most challenging. So I ensure myself going through that like sober. And then what that does is anything that comes up, I'm going to feel it, right? I'm going to face it head on and just get rid of it right away. I'm just going to get rid of that baggage. Yeah. And then on the weekend, it's pure connection time. And cannabis, like as an example, is the revealer, right? So it will reveal to you what's already inside of you. And so for me, it's a great way to check in and say, what am I feeling, right? Because, now that I've learned to use it properly, it's like pure happiness, man. Like, the cannabis ceremonies that I lead, right? Like that is just like pure love. I think you were at the one in Virginia this last time, right? You were there for that. Yeah. It was
great.
Dude, using it to invoke certain states of awareness. Oh, dude, it's a blast, man. And, I'm really glad that you brought up, LSD and feeling like a kid again, because in my experience, that's what it's done for me. And what came up to me for me when you were saying that is that really what all of these things do is they're incredible pattern interrupters, right? So say if you've been led to believe that, like, again, like we talked about a little bit before, say you're led to believe, like most Western people, Western society people, that, you're born into a place and you got to work really hard and life's going to be really tough. And, you need to have this new car and you need to keep up with the Joneses and have this big house and, have kids at a certain age and all these things that are placed on top of you. And then one weekend you decide to go do shrooms, right? Or LSD. And all of a sudden, for a second, you're completely blown out of that. And you're like, maybe I just want to go sell hot dogs on the beach in Hawaii. Like, that sounds really cool. Maybe I don't need any of this, right? And that's your little PEEK experience, right? So it's a peek behind the veil, and I love distinguishing between peak and peak experiences. Like, what do you mean? It's the same word. Well, what I mean is that, like, most medicine journeys are PEAK experiences. So they're going to allow you to really have like you were saying, like everything's more vibratory. It's going to bring down a lot of the conscious parameters that your consciousness brings up, because honestly, you don't need all that when you're trying to drive down the highway. Right. But when you're, really what these experiences are meant to do in my eyes is, allow you to see what's already there all the time, like you mentioned, right? And it's almost like as if you were buying apples each day and you had no idea that they were coming from somewhere, right? So you're just eating apples and you're like, all right, cool, they're good. And then one day you go apple picking, right? You see the tree they come from. You get to feel the bark. You get to be out in the sunshine. Right. You get to pick a fresh apple off and taste it right off the tree. Your experience of eating an apple is going to be changed forever now, right? And so that's what psychedelics do for me is like, or they've done for me, is they've allowed me to experience my daily life, my PEEK experiences, right? Like, so the feeling of like holding my girlfriend's hand, right, is so different now because I realize just how special it is that in this lifetime, in this rock that we're floating through space on, that we found one another and we get to hold each other's hands. Like, that's epic, right? And yet, like, for so long, I looked things like that over, and it's just so cool, man.
Yeah, I appreciate that's nice. That's nice, man. That's nice.
Dude. Yeah, man. I'm curious too. I feel plant medicines are among the most natural human interactions on planet Earth that we've ever had, as we've been interacting with them since the dawn of time. And when we look around right now in society, like there's like a renaissance of sorts happening, right? Like a lot of research is coming out now. So a lot of like the research heavy people, they get their cup filled by saying, okay, the research checks out. Like a lot of the brainiacs, they have their cup full. So, I think psychedelics are starting, the tune is changing, right? Like the image of them is changing, right? You can't really slander psilocybin as much as you could, because then you're like, what, are you smarter than Johns Hopkins University? You think you know better, And so like, that's what I love to throw out when people go against them, But, I'm curious, why do you feel these medicines are once again coming back into good graces with society in the present day? Like, what do you think is going on right now? Why do you think so many people are finding them?
Maybe it could be everything is in divine time. I'm not sure. It's an interesting question. As I look on it and think on it and ponder on it, it's about time. That's how I feel.
Dude, I think you got it perfect. I think you said it perfect. It's divine timing, right? Like, and when we look around the world, like what I've seen, right? Because as I was writing this question out, I was like thinking about it. I was like, why is it now? And I think about like, you're seeing the masculine way of living, right? And that like that we've had for so long, this structure, right? This power that like, or this force rather, right? Because it's not power, it's force that the masculine identity has had over society, right? With structure and all these rules and whatever. You're seeing that fall away, right? And you're seeing the feminine start starting up, right? Where people are like, again, like realizing, hey, maybe I just want to go sell hot dogs on the beach. Maybe I don't need this new car. Maybe happiness is, comes from within, not from without, and like all these things. And so I think like that's a big reason why these are starting to become more acceptable, is because people are starting to realize that the only worth you have in society is not limited to what productivity you put in at a office cubicle each week. I think people are starting to realize that the facade of that is ending. The lie of that is ending. I think it's just, the evidence in the favor is stacking up. And so it's been super curious.
To switch it a tad bit, the fear of dying is diminished in a sense when you are tapping into plant medicines and psychedelics, and in that aspect when you really start going deeper and diving into it. And that is a story that you would want to project to the world. In the sense, me personally, I use plant medicine to understand what it's like to not be an ego or to not be an identity for a second, to take a step back and see what that is. What is that? What does that feel like? What am I observing? Who is the observer? And then when I come back, and it's crazy when I come back, right? And I'm able to like live this life. It's truly phenomenal. But plant medicines have allowed everything to coexist. But when you talk about fear and you talk about death, I think Johns Hopkins originally started because of cancer patients and them being fearful of dying. And that actually helping and being a tool to dissolve not just that, but other things that stem from low level vibrations.
I love that, man. Because I really feel you hit the nail on the head there. And I think in that study, don't quote me to this, anyone listening, but I think there was like between 60 and 75% of those people said it was the most profound experience they had ever had in their life. And these are people at the end of their life, right? So we're not talking to like 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds. These are people that like have seen some shit, like they've gone through, they grew up in a different time, and yet still it was the most profound experience of their life. And you talk about you think about why these medicines have been used ceremonially, right? And as rites of passage specifically, like you talk about ayahuasca, when kids reached, it was between 12 and 14, they were having their first, they were arguably having it before them, but, they were becoming aware of the true nature of the human being far before, arguably most people don't ever really figure out what the nature of the human being is these days, and I think it's no argument that 2020 was a wild year for all of us as a collective. And I noticed many more people becoming interested in psychedelics that otherwise would have had zero interest in learning about them. Especially with what you were talking about fear, right? And all these lower level vibrations, right? I feel like all of that was exponented this past year. And I'm curious, in your circles or just in your research or just things you've seen, observed, did you notice a similar trend? And if so, why do you feel that happened? I know we already talked about fear and such, but any other reasons you think that may have happened this year?
I think fear. I was going to say consolidation, but I think fear. I think fear is it's a big one. When you have a belief system, it creates your identity. So everything that you believe in is based off of your identity, and when you take that shit away for a second, it's just great. You just yeah. None of that shit matters. None of that shit matters. Just be for a second.
Yeah.
That shit is just crazy. It's just a cognitive shift.
Yeah.
Cognitive shift.
Yeah.
We need more. The whole world needs a piece of this.
I agree, man.
The whole world. We're the pioneers.
Dude, we are, man. We are the heroes we've been waiting for, And I mean that for everyone who's doing this work, not necessarily only people that are doing psychedelics, but everyone is just questioning, right? And asking, what is the meaning of life? What are we doing here? What's the purpose, right? And it's not necessarily the answer that someone comes up with, because I think for all of us, that answer is going to be different. Some people your, reason for living right now is helping people reclaim their sovereignty and movement, right? And helping people become more powerful. And my reason is helping people discover who they are, what they want to do, right? Realizing what the nature of their human beingness really is, right? So, you talked about how being able to relinquish your identity for a little while was super profound for you. And, I feel that is something so important to realize in life, because there used to be this tradition, I forget the name of it offhand, in India, where children, when they were born, they were not taught anything. They were just sent to play until they were 12. And once they were 12, they were given the option to learn. If they wanted to say yes to that, they had to expand their identity to that of a global citizen. So they were no longer an Indian, they were a global citizen. And so what that did was it allowed them at a very early age to realize that the mind was a passenger, right? And that the awareness, the conscious awareness, the source energy within them was, meant to be in the driver's seat. And so I feel as though And what these plant teachers have taught me, along with, what it sounds like from what you experienced and so many other people I've talked with, is it's the first time we actually understand who we really are. Like that question, who am I? You really are able to understand that at like a heart level. Because again, I could tell someone, hey, you're not your identity. And someone goes, cool. But until they experience it, I think where like religion goes wrong, is that like, I think at some point people stopped having the direct experience of God and they started like talking about it and writing it down, and people started, reading it instead of experiencing it, Yeah.
Another profound thing that I've been able to be aware of with psychedelics is not even just the stillness aspect of psychedelics, the sound bowl aspect of psychedelics. There's also the being on psychedelics and projecting and facilitating and doing those things and feeling and chess making people and putting them in different positions and things like that. Just because you're so connected, you feel that shit.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's not even you. You are the messenger. You're just moving the pieces and you're just being, and it's fucking great. So you have those meditations as well, and those those sensations with the psilocybin. So it's so many different ones, so many different ways. And once you are intentful, you're able to control it in the ways. It's not even control, but you're able to
flow with it, really.
To lean into lean into that. Yeah. Whichever way it goes.
Yeah. And I think you brought up something really important there, right? Which is like, when you experience plant medicines with other people, you have the opportunity to really experience oneness for the first time, right? Like, which for anyone listening who hasn't experienced that, it's, again, like I understood for years when people said, hey, we're all one. Like it made sense. Like, we're all come from the same source. But then I felt it, right? Then I felt it. And then it just seemed so ridiculous to me that like, wait, we really care what the color of our skin is? We really care what our gender is? Like, we're all the exact same thing, right? And so I feel as though that experience, when you look at the world today, right? I mean, more people have died for religion than any other cause ever. And so that was all like, because my team does this and your team, like it's the divide and conquer thing, right?
The ego.
Yeah. And we look at what's happening, with politics, with anything. It's always my team against yours, all this stuff, when really at the end of the day, we're all on the same team,
Right. Yeah. Divide and conquer.
Yeah, man.
It's the dog eat dog mentality of how you successfully make it into the corporate world.
Yeah. Yep.
That's a deep rabbit hole to go through,
Dude. Well, it's like that masculine stuff that we were talking about earlier, right? It's more of the masculine, like, nope, it's the ego running amok, basically, right? It's like the person next to me is they must be trying to get my job, so I'm going to belittle them and be in competition with them, right? Which, as soon as you're in competition with someone else, you're in competition with yourself, right? Because what you are putting out, you're also taking in. And so that's a really funny paradox too, because I imagine that you've seen this too. Like some of the people that I've met that are the most competitive are also the most miserable, right? Because they're like, it's like, what are you putting all this energy out for? And it's been very interesting.
Yeah, definitely. Super.
Yeah. Something I'm curious. One of the things I joke about often is that even though we have elders, like I was talking about, we have very few wise elders among us to pass down traditions and rituals surrounding many different things, including plant medicines. This is one of the main reasons, like I said, I started this podcast so that people curious about psychedelics could hear about the experiences others have gone through and benefit from what they've learned along the way. And that being said, I'm curious what some of the rituals and methodologies that you have found helpful in plant medicine journeys are that have allowed you to feel safe and secure while journeying. So sage or like meditation or breath work or anything you do while journeying to down-regulate yourself, to feel more connected. If something starts getting challenging, what you do to bring yourself back to the present moment, etc.
Yeah, I usually burn sage before I start. Sage a place. I have cats, so I have 2 cats, and they're just they're great, but they're super playful. So it's just like I have to get them in the space. I have to get them in an area in which I can just relax and chill. Yeah. Sometimes I I do meditate, and I can hear them, and it's just another form of catalysis and practicing and things like that. But depending on the type of experience that I want to have, it's the set and setting. So you just have to make sure you cater to that. Sage in the place. As far as crystals, I actually gave most of my crystals away to people just because. And I've gotten to the point where I used to be so into crystals and the names of the crystals and how they do certain things. And I lost the intent of it. So in losing the intent, I ended up giving it to others. So until I can appreciate crystals again, I have yet to bring crystals back into my practice. But I'm very intentional about things. So the reason why I said that, which was the reason why I said that. But I honestly feel that I can tap into it at any type of moment. Other than sage in the place, I always have red lights on. So I have a red light and just set the vibe. Whatever your vibe is, I don't need much at all. Like I don't need really anything to tap in.
Yeah.
But it's certain people who do. I promise you, I don't need much. I don't need much at all. Yeah. So I have fun. I have fun with it. And I know if things become challenging, I just take deep breaths. And I understand that I asked for this experience. And this is the experience that you're having for a reason. And not only that, you are protected. You're always protected. And there's always like the guy on the shoulder that's like, and ain't nobody really even die off psychedelics before. And then you just put that guy in.
Yeah.
Like, thanks, you just nuts him. And you're like, yeah, good. Right. So at the end of the day, everything's fine. And you prepare yourself. Like you always have people that you could call. And depending on like, if you're a beginner or not, you could just be honest and let the people know like, hey, y'all are my boys. I'm about to dose heavy this time. If I ever call you, just know this is why, and I just need love.
Yeah.
Whatever the case is. You also have like lines and things that you can call if you're by yourself, things like that, like a trip line that can guide you if you don't feel like communicating with someone that you know is the best thing. So it's like little things to be mindful of until you develop calluses in yourself and the positive nature in yourself to be able to hold your fort down on your own. But also keeping those little things. So like when I do go super, super high on teas, I always let someone know. If not, my queen, she's here with me, so she'll know too. But I enjoy challenges. And I've always enjoyed challenges before plant medicine. And for me, it's just like, I don't always have challenges. And sometimes it's just great. Like it's just great. And and like when I feel really, really great, I want to make others feel really, really great. And the only person that's in the space right now is Queen. So like yesterday, it's like, lay down. We're about to do a meditation. We're about to do some meditation. And I'm like, and I'm feeling so good. I'm like, breathe. And I'm setting the mood. Like I had the sound bowl and I'm doing the bowl. And it's just like, I'm a messenger. I'm connected. And we cried. And it's like, this was perfect. This is like everything that it needed to be. And plant medicine was able to take me to that space, to heal not just myself, but to heal someone else. So it's great. Connection is great. But yeah, those are certain things when things get challenging. You always know you got your day ones, the people that you can always connect to, but you also got trip lines and things like that you can look into. And then you also, aside from that, you have your mantras, things that you say to yourself. If you're goddamn, you could be on your knees. You can be like, it could have hit you so hard. Like it hit you so hard, you're like, hold on, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
You know, it just start rocking it up. You're like, whoo. You got to learn, because your heart, you have to, once you start understanding your body and knowing like when you get into plant medicines, what things are always going to happen. Your heart rate is always going to increase for a second. It's just the nature of it. It's like something new is going on. Your body's like ramping up. Okay. Know that that's a stage, that's a process. And once you understand that, it's like, okay, start down regulating. Once you start down regulating, you can understand things. Because when you breathe really, really, really fast, is your thinking rationality goes away, and you're just like out here, you're just rampant. Right? So you got to really take a breath so you can actually listen and make educated decisions in a way. So yeah,
I love that, man.
It's great.
Dude,
great.
Thank you for taking us on that journey, because I think for so many, there are so many illnesses and diseases running rampant. And a lot of times, like the disease is just like society, right? Like, and not to be one of those anarchists or whatever. Just sometimes like you have hard days, right? You got a busy day, like trying to make money to cover rent or something. And, sometimes invoking some of these medicines, that's what I love cannabis for. Again, it's the revealer, and it can allow me to express emotions that I otherwise wouldn't feel safe to do so, like sadness, right? Anger, frustration, right? I can actually let that out. I can cry. I can get it out of me. And having a partner to share those experiences with, oh man, people say heaven on earth doesn't exist. Pff, you haven't tried that yet, And, speaking of illnesses and diseases and such like that, I know one of the medicines that you and I have shared some great stories on is psilocybin, right? And, we didn't even get into how, human beings are most closely related DNA-wise to fungus, right? And that whole rabbit hole we could get down. But I'm curious, our mutual love of the healing benefits stemming from the compound of psilocybin, specifically in diseases such as anxiety, depression, Alzheimer's, dementia, among many others. Considering these are some of the most prevalent diseases in our society these days, what are your hopes for those affected by these diseases as treatments such as psilocybin begin to replace the typical treatment paradigm of pharmaceuticals? So as people start moving closer to psychedelics and start using them for these diseases, what do you hope starts happening? What trend do you want to see happen as people start moving away from pharmaceuticals?
So me personally, oh gosh. So before we get into that, and you might have to remind me, because that was
I got you, bro.
That's cool. Now, this is a perfect platform to say this part though. So aside from the whole spiritual aspect of psilocybin and things like that, or just drugs in general, you had mentioned like surviving in a way. Certain areas around the world, certain people just want to survive the day, and they use certain, let's take plant medicines out of like the title of it and just use drugs, quote unquote, society drugs to survive that day, because surviving the day is way more important to them than, the healing or the pros and the cons. This is just how they get through the day. And that has a powerful meaning or underlying meaning behind it as well. So like people could do coke, people can do like acid, like things that aren't considered normal or whatever the case is in society, but they are actually freer. They're able to like express themselves, and they are maybe surviving, but it's healing them too in the process. Right. Now my hopes for psilocybin in the future is we've been talking for quite some time. I'm not sure on the duration so far, but every 3 seconds someone develops dementia. So I feel like a lot of people have developed it since we've been on this phone call, since we've been on this audio recording, right? So my push as a messenger is dancing, right? Dancing, activating multiple parts of the brain and reducing dementia. So there's expected over 10 million people to get dementia this year. So I know the studies on dancing and how that affects the brain, but also I know the studies on psilocybin and how that enriches the brain and how that allows for you to connect even more. So imagine blending those two together. Imagine like how much new nerve net that you're going to get. Imagine how many connections you're going to have. And then what is that going to do? Every 3 seconds is going to turn into every 5 seconds is going to turn into every 10 seconds. And now the 10 million is going to turn into 8 million. That's what I'm looking for, longevity. So my interest is in me continuing to push as this messenger of Chuck Dementia, because that's the brand and the business.
Yeah.
I'm able to, on the whole side, on the global scale, I want to check every year. And I'm like, damn it, all right. Damn it, it's still three seconds. So I'm like, all right, well, I need to keep pushing. I need to keep pushing. I'm like, all right, this is what you need. You need, psilocybin. Let's introduce it. LSD. I want to be one of the first to start jarring LSD, being a kid, and introducing it for teachers and allowing teachers who's dealing with students to connect more on their level. And I feel like that'll help them tremendously. And it's not just teachers, but anyone. Yeah. So, yeah.
The future is so bright, man. I'm so grateful that the research is coming out now and that, we're seeing Oregon just decriminalized all drugs, right? And, it's interesting because there are definitely, many drugs that do damage to people. And what I've noticed, even with those, even though the podcast is about psychedelics, what I will say about drug prohibition is it doesn't work, right? And so a lot of the people that are using harder drugs, they're experiencing some sort of turmoil, right? I don't think there's that many people that wake up extremely happy that decide to go rail a line of coke or do heroin, right? So it's I think we're starting to tickle the bigger issue here, which is hey, these people need help, right? And the great thing about psychedelics is for a lot of people that are suffering from anxiety, depression, drug addiction, they can actually help a lot, right? Ibogaine has a 70 or 60 or 70% success rate with heroin addiction. People go in, they do Ibogaine, and they come out not addicted to heroin. That's incredible, right?
It's powerful.
Yeah. And so, being able to be alive in this time period is just so humbling, and getting to have these epic conversations with epic humans such as yourself, man, that's that shit I do like,
Now you got to think about the fear of actually being your better self. I think sometimes that is a block. So if you knew that there was a healing property that could literally make you just be a whole different person, a whole person.
Yeah.
It just takes setting, love, and a proper facilitator. And it's I don't think people know how they will act this. It's now I have this responsibility. Now I'm this new person. Oh my God. So I know, but I hate it here, but I like it here because I'm comfortable here.
Yeah.
I know what it's like to be here. But the unknown, this new self, this you say this more connected me. I'm not sure I'm ready for that yet.
Yeah. And you know what I think it is too? You touched on something really cool there, which is I think it's that people are not ready for the changes they're going to have to make in their life once they realize that when I feel like this, I don't need to live in this big house. I don't need to, date this person who isn't treating me well. I don't need to work at this job that I don't like. And so the amount of change that they perceive having to make right away is really scary. And that's what I tell people is listen, just the awareness that things in your life are not in alignment with who and what you really want to be is a great step. And then from there, it's about slow transition, right? Micro progressions, So say if you decide you want to go sell hot dogs on the beach in Hawaii, right? And you want to quit your corporate job, start thinking about okay, what's my overhead cost going to be when I move down there, right? You don't have to just up and leave your job and move to Hawaii in one day, right? You can take a year and figure it out, right? And every day start practicing those things like meditating, breath work, going for a walk, just experiencing what life really is, because work, in the typical sense of what work has come to mean is not living, really The reason we make money in theory is to be able to enjoy it and to live. But the paradox is that our work week is 5 days and our weekend is 2 days. And we're so upregulated as a society that more often than not, it takes us more than 2 days just to get back to baseline. And then we're back to Monday. And it's like, oh, don't worry. There's a huge pot of coffee in the kitchen of work, most likely covered in glyphosate and covered in other chemicals, right? So it's not even what coffee was intended to be. And don't worry, you got as much of that for free as you want. You can just, upregulate yourself into a panic attack, And
Right.
what I always tell people is like, whatever allows you to feel more like you, just get curious and go there, like that's the only job you really have in life, and what a fun job, man, because like, I love playing Frisbee. I love playing guitar, right? Like those things figuring that out was exciting to me. I think a lot of the times we synonymize work, quote unquote, like the typical definition of work with when someone says, oh, like, now like I have this deeper connection to myself. Now I have to figure all this stuff out. They immediately think it's going to be work because every time they've had to do something, it's been in a context where they might not like what they're doing. And so then,
Right.
discovering themselves ends up becoming work too. And, so I always try to break people out of that and just be like, man, you can just have fun with it. Like this shit is easy.
Right.
When you do it the way it's intended, it's easy,
Yeah.
And,
And a lot of that work is, for me, law of attraction is a thing. So I've learned that I've worked less. I mean, I still work, but I work more on my mentality of attracting, and I just live and it just happens. It just comes to me.
yeah.
And sometimes that fear in itself is the unknown as well. Like, but which is also a wall a defense mechanism that people like are afraid to lean into, because it's going, like you said, it's going to show certain sides. It's going to show certain things that it's like, it's like the real version is like, you can jump off the ledge and be safe now. And then it's like, you have to make that decision. You have to make that decision, but
yeah.
it's crazy.
Yeah, man. It's really interesting too, because, in doing so, to quote Terrence McKenna, it's like, this is like the shamanic dance of the waterfall by hurling yourself into the abyss and realizing it's a featherbed, and a lot of times like what we fear, it's like the cartoon where where you're walking down an alleyway and you see a huge shadow of what looks like a lion and then it's just a little house cat, right? And, one of Mark England's favorite quotes, if you laugh at the devil, he will run away. And it's like, I've never heard anything more accurate in my life.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
Jungle.
That was great.
This conversation, man, has exceeded even the best of expectations I had for it. And I'm so grateful that you could stop by and share your wisdom with the listeners, as I truly feel it is people like yourself that are going to be the people that create massive positive change in society, which is a path I am beyond excited to walk alongside you. And so, my man, where can people go to find you, work with you, and learn from you?
www.kjungle.com. KAYjungle.com. Now, plant medicines, the password is love.
Dude, I love that. And I think you just answered my last question, but I'm going to say it anyway, and you can repeat it if you want, right? Which is, throughout all your journeys in psychedelic medicines, what has been the most profound lesson you've learned thus far?
It's two things, love or fear. Either you move in love or you move in fear. Just pick which one.
I love that, man. And what's great about that is like, what I've realized in that is that I don't need to understand everything that happens in life. Like a lot of times with psychedelics or these things, I'd be like, well, what's making me feel more like me? And once I surrendered to that and realized that it literally is love or the absence of love, aka fear, life got so much more exciting because I was able to put down so many cinder blocks that I was carrying for no reason other than I convinced myself for most of my life that I needed to carry them,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Dude.
That's great.
Hell yeah, bro. When I think of what the future has in store for psychedelics, I feel they are going to play a big part in our daily lives with methodologies such as microdosing becoming more and more popular. And that being said, the approach that Kay takes to speaking about psychedelics and using them in his own life mirror that hypothesis by including them into modalities such as movement practices, and I truly feel as though he is embodying the future of what psychedelic medicine will look like as prohibition continues to fall away. Kay is a warrior of truth, and I am sure it is easy for all of you listening to see now why I wanted him on the show right away. Do yourselves a favor right now and give him a follow and keep a close eye on him, because his ability to think outside of the box and sing a different tune than most with regards to psychedelics is just getting started. Speaking of just getting started, this show is a brand new baby to me. And the main reason I started the show was to ensure that individuals looking to find info on psychedelic medicines could turn on, tune in, and drop out while hearing the full range of experiences, benefits, risks, and transformations pertaining to psychedelic medicines. And by you leaving reviews on iTunes and sharing the show with all of those you love most, we can collectively change the tune on the slander and propaganda psychedelics have wrongfully had placed on them. Kay, thank you so much for journeying with us today, my friend, and until next time, may you continue to enjoy the little things with a smile on your face. Many blessings to you.